The other guys over here earlier?
Yeah. This is Peter Schiff running for U.S. Senate. Welcome. Kick your heart. Some people are dying to meet. Can't wait to meet one.
Well, thanks everybody for inviting me here. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for United States Senate. This is something new for me. I haven't been active in politics. I've never run for anything in my life, but I'm running for the United States Senate. And I've been a businessman. I own a small business here in Connecticut. It's a brokerage firm. I'm in Westport, Connecticut. I also have 5 other offices around the country. I work mainly with individual investors, like many of the people in this room who send me their IRAs or their retirement plans or regular accounts. I also do some asset management. I have a couple of mutual funds. I do investment banking. And what's unique about my particular focus is I'm very macroeconomic oriented, very big picture. And I'm always looking at how government policy inhibits or distorts free markets and how it damages an economy and growth and creates inflation. And so as a result, I've been very focused as a private citizen on the policies coming out of Washington. And I've recognized for a number of years how destructive that they were, not only to our economy, but to investments made in our country. The government, the Federal Reserve, has been pursuing a reckless policy that's very destructive to the value of our money. And Congress has pursued a policy and presidents that are very destructive to our economy. They undermine our competitiveness. They layer our economy with rules and regulations that impede it, that don't do anything to improve the quality of those businesses or the services or the products that they provide. They simply needlessly run up their costs and render them uncompetitive. And so as a result of all these policies, as an investment advisor trying to look for the best investment opportunities, I've consistently found them outside the United States. And I've been focused on trying to protect myself, trying to protect my clients and their retirements or their kids' education from the destructive policies coming out of Washington, which I see as undermining their investment returns. But at this stage of the game, those mistakes are now so large, the enormity, and the stakes are now so high that it's not just even the economy that's at stake, but our entire way of life. And so, as an investor, I can continue to figure out how to deal with it. But as an American, I'd rather stop it from happening. I'd rather change the policies coming out of Washington, right? Instead of dodging the bullets, why don't I go and wrestle that machine gun out of their hands so that they're not firing them in the first place? And so I decided to run for the United States Senate. And what I want to do is what politicians refuse to do. Either they don't understand it, or if they do, they don't care because it conflicts with their number one priority, which is perpetuating their own careers, getting reelected, not saying or doing anything that's unpopular, simply trying to appease voters and trying to trade short-term gain for long-term pain, trying to postpone the consequences of these problems to beyond the next election instead of dealing with them now. And that strategy is why the country is in such a gigantic hole. Now, you can go back to the bursting of the dot-com bubble in 2000. We had a huge mania that was the result of reckless monetary policy that caused a lot of foolish things. A lot of people, some people in this room might have invested in some of those dot-com stocks. But a lot of bad decisions were made under the influence of cheap money by the Fed. And when the effect of that stimulus wore off and we had a recession, instead of hunkering down and instead of George Bush leveling with the American public and saying, look, we had a reckless party, now we're going to have to pay the piper, instead of allowing a severe recession, which would have been over in a year or two, it would have been bad for some people, but we would have corrected mistakes and we would have had a healthier economy at the end of it. Instead of letting that happen, the politicians couldn't resist the urge to try to make it better. And so what did they do? They stimulated the economy. They did it by slashing interest rates to 1%. They did it by increasing government spending and running a Keynesian deficit to prime the pump. And they succeeded. They postponed the pain until 2008. And it was a lot worse than it would have been if we just would have sucked it up and bore it back then. Because what did they do? How did they get us out of that recession? They blew up a housing bubble. They got everybody to spend money they didn't have. We spent trillions of dollars. We bought all kinds of stuff that we couldn't afford. We ran trade deficits through the roof, $60 billion a month. Our savings rate went negative. We all speculated and consumed. It was all a fantasy. None of it was real. The politicians applauded it all the way, and they cheerleaded it. Hey, this is great. Look at this consumer spending. Every time there was a report on retail sales and Americans went to the malls with their credit cards, the politicians said this is great. Wall Street said it was great. We all had this giant party. And the bills came due in 2008. We have a financial collapse. Right? We have the hangover from that stimulus. And what does the government do? Did they learn from their mistakes? No. We're just repeating them. What is Bush doing? Same thing. And what is Obama doing? Same thing Bush did. We need a stimulus. And this is a bigger stimulus because it's a bigger problem because of the last stimulus. What's the stimulus? Well, last time we put interest rates at 1%. Now we're going to try 0%. Bush deficits were $300 billion. We'll do $1.5 trillion. Right? We have got the Bush stimulus. The dosage has been up. It's on steroids. And the damage is going to be proportionally that much greater, right? Because it's the stimulus that is why the economy is sick. Because it's a sedative. It stimulates government. It stimulates consumption and debt. And it inhibits real economic growth. It stifles savings and capital investment. That's what's going on. And so the people who are telling us that our economy is recovering, they're the same people that told us it was in great shape right up until the point it went off the edge of a cliff. And why do they think it's recovering? Because the GDP is rising. Well, why is it rising? Because government is spending money. Because consumers are spending money. Well, where are they getting it? We're borrowing it. The debt is growing much faster than the GDP. The problem is we got to pay that debt back with interest. Where's that money going to come from? It comes out of future consumption that has to collapse. So all we're doing again is we're trading some short-term gain for long-term pain. And when I'm talking about long-term, I'm not talking about 20 years from now. I'm talking about 2 years from now, 1 year from now. Who knows? It's coming up soon. I think the real economic crisis is coming during this next Senate term. That's why I want to be there. I want to be there to try to defuse the bomb before it goes off. Right now, there's no one in the United States Senate that understands this problem. And if they do, they certainly aren't doing anything about it. We need somebody that understands economics, that understands finance, that understands Wall Street, and understands how we got into this mess. The people that caused the problem are not the ones that are going to solve it. And no one is going to solve it if they care about getting reelected. Because if you're listening to your pollsters, you're never going to do the right thing. Because the right thing involves taking away somebody's benefits, cutting government spending, and that means somebody's going to get a smaller check. Somebody in government is going to get a pink slip. And no one wants to be the bearer of bad news. They want to pretend that we can keep on borrowing without consequence. Well, we can't. Right? What happened in 2008, that wasn't the end of it. That was the beginning. That was the tip of the iceberg. Right? There's a lot more beneath the surface. I think we're headed for an outright currency crisis where the value of our money, the dollar, collapses. And that means we can't buy anything. So these stimulus checks aren't going to matter because they're not going to buy anything. Prices are going to go through the roof. Interest rates are going to go through the roof. And we're going to have many more people unemployed. The problem is even the people who still have jobs won't be able to buy very much with their paychecks. That is what's coming unless we do something. And I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm not there to talk about it. I'm not going to Washington to abandon my principles like so many other Republicans. I'm going to Washington to make sure that the other senators adopt my principles. And my principles are limited government, sound money, lower government spending, fewer regulations, lower taxes. In other words, I don't want to be part of making government bigger. I want to actively make it smaller. I want to start dismantling this gigantic government that has been erected that has so undermined our economy. We need to repeal regulations, not write new ones like they've been doing. We need to abolish entire government agencies and departments. We need to slash federal payroll. We need to cut across the board. The federal government right now is spending close to $4 trillion a year. The 2011 fiscal budget is $3.8 trillion. That is more than twice what we spent in 2000. I mean, how can we possibly afford a government that big when we're broke? I mean, the government was huge 10 years ago, and it's just doubled in size. And you know what? It's going to get even bigger. This isn't the end of it. It's continuing to grow. And as it grows, it sucks the life out of the economy. Because the government doesn't create any wealth. It has to live off the wealth that the private sector creates. But the bigger it gets, the more wealth it has to suck up to sustain itself.
And where it gets its money first is the capital. It's driving the capital away. And without capital, we can't have businesses. Businesses can't expand. They can't be created. If we don't have businesses, we don't have jobs. So the whole economy is going to be sacrificed on this altar of bigger government, more government. And I will bring it to an end. And what I want to do, and the first thing that I want to do, and I'll take your questions on where I stand on any of the issues and on my campaign and how I'm going to win this race. But what I really want to do to bring this to a forefront is we have a debt ceiling in this country. The problem is it's not a real ceiling because every time we get up to it, they vote to increase it. So it's an ever